Hi guys, VST here, Simplistic, and today I'm gonna do a little bit of a different video, namely doing something I'm not really in favor of, and that is comparing two Google camera modes. And I'm just doing this, guys, to prove something, and I'm just doing this also because you wanted me to do so, so it was a much requested video. But before we start with this comparison, I'm gonna wanna walk you through some things, and in fact you're gonna see I have taken already several pics to kind of like make my point, and this is also what is gonna be shared into the video, guys. But before we start, I wanna make a very big statement and really want to make sure that this kind of like reaches to you, because comparing two different Google camera modes to me is kind of obsolete and really doesn't make sense, and you'll understand why. But before we start with the comparison, I want to guide you through some major things that I think are very important for you to understand before we can take with the comparison. And this really is what makes a picture, guys, because we have these smartphones in our hands that are pretty much taking nice pics, of course not DSLR level still but almost, right? And we need to understand how these things work and what is like the magic behind, because there is a lot of software and a lot of processing involved, but also there is of course a lot of hardware involved. And like a typical smartphone has a camera lens and a camera sensor, which is pretty much what is found into the DSLR mechanics. But it's very important to understand some major things. So what makes really a picture is really the exposure, and the exposure is actually what kind of information and how much information goes from the outside world to the camera sensor, guys. All right, so I think this is very, very important. So we need to understand first what is exposure. So exposure is what goes from the outside in terms of light, travels to here to the sensor, and then we have three things that kind of like constitute what is the exposure. And I want to talk a little bit about those three things because I believe they're very important. So what we see as the end result is actually a composition of three main things, and one is of course the shutter speed, then we have the aperture, and then we have the ISO. And what I'm showing here, guys, on the screen right now is called like the exposure triangle. You're gonna see this, I'm gonna post a link down below, but I want to talk about these three components. So shutter speed, ISO and aperture, they make the exposure, and that's actually what we see on our screens. All right, so give it or take it, this is like the standard photography theory, guys. First I want to talk about the aperture. So the aperture, guys, is actually the amount of light that is released through here, the lens. And what I'm saying here and what I'm showing on the screen is the typical aperture sizes. So we have f1.4 to f2, and you see that the lower the aperture number is, then the wider the lens is. So I am showing actually the Samsung Galaxy Note 9 here on the screen, because this is one of the few smartphones that have a variable aperture, which means that it can go and change the aperture size, guys. And not a lot of the phones can do this, right? I don't think that there are too many phones that can do this right now on the market. Even the latest Samsung Galaxy phones right now are running with a fixed aperture, but the aperture size will shrink, and then it will determine how much light exactly will travel here on the sensor, guys. So this is aperture. Then something else very important we have, it's called the shutter speed, right? And the shutter speed is just like a door, guys. So if we go here with the shutter speed of 1 second to 500, then it means that the door is going to be closed with this timing. Or if we go, let's say, to 1.2, it seems that the door in front of the sensor is going to be closed in I think 1/2 of the second. All right, so all these here, guys, are timing, and they determine how slow or how quick the sensor is to shut down. So this is the shutter speed. All right, it's just like a door, preventing the light to go inside in the sensor and be captured. And then the third component that we have, so we cover the aperture, we cover the shutter speed. The third component that we have is the so-called ISO, and this pretty much determines the sensitivity of the light that the sensor is capturing. All right, and I think you might have guessed already, right? Upping up your ISO will get you more sensitivity, probably capturing also more details, but you see there are some caveats and some sacrifices, because upping up the ISO always ends up with having noise added to your picture. All right, so that's why it's very important to understand, going back here to this exposure triangle, that whatever we see on the screen is just a composition between the shutter speed, the ISO and the aperture. And why I wanted to talk about this, guys, because it's really important to understand Google camera mod comparison is not a good idea, and the reason for that is that Google camera mods are running with the so-called custom XMLs, which is the so-called custom configurations. See what I mean? And the custom configurations often really are made of settings tweaked by people that are making them for themselves, of course, and for the community. So this is very important, and without further ado, guys, I just want to show you some of the pictures. So the left picture here on the screen is always going to be shot by the latest Urnyx Google camera, and the right picture on the screen is going to be shot with the latest Arnova camera. And I have used no XMLs for most of those pictures and set the auto white balance to on. For some of the pictures I have used indeed XMLs. For the Arnova one I used the 6-arm Priest lattice XML low kill one, and for the Urnyx I used the Pixel 4 XML, just to make my point, because you will see that there are almost no differences in most of those pictures, alright? But with that said, guys, let me first start with the very first shot, alright? So again, left we have Urnyx, right we have Arnova, okay? Now what we see here, that's a shot, an outside shot. You can pretty much see even, you know, the f or the aperture is pretty much the same. The ISO is even pretty much the same, ISO 99, and then the only difference, guys, here that we have is in the shutter speed. And that is why I wanted to explain the settings to you guys, so that you are able to understand what we see on the screen. So here we have the shutter speed, 1 second of 14558. Then we have the aperture, which is for both pictures as we see on the screen, f 1.65, and then we have the ISO. So this is kind of like the sensitivity. So again, this here is kind of like the door that falls between the sensor and stops the light. This here is the amount of light that we allow the sensor to capture, and then the latest here is the sensitivity of how much light we allow to hit your sensor, guys. Okay, on the left hand side we have the Urnyx, on the right hand side we have the Arnova, guys, and just by looking at this, we only see some subtle differences coming namely from the auto white balance. So you see here it's a little bit more yellowish, right? On both pictures here I have used auto white balance on, and if we go here and just go for a crop, we pretty much see that the level of detail is still the same, you know, all these small things here, the balcony, so there are no surprises. It's pretty much still the same, so level of detail kind of the same for this picture. Let's go for the next one. On the left hand side here again we have Urnyx, on the right hand side we have Arnova. Let's go for the full picture here. Now here we see there is a big differences in terms of shutter speed, alright? So here we have 1800 and here we have 122398, but see we have the same aperture, and then of course here on the Arnova side we have a little bit more ISO, meaning probably more detail, but we don't, yeah, probably with bare eyes we cannot even see the differences. Just by looking at these pictures they pretty much look the same. Let's go and see the crops, guys. Alright, let's just see here the details. Alright, so left hand side we have the Urnyx, here we can read Alexander, here we can read Alexander. I just think they're absolutely the same. Looking here at the grass, no big differences whatsoever, alright? Now the next pictures I'm gonna show is a tree. Again, left hand side we have Urnyx, right here we have Arnova. The shutter speed almost the same, the aperture almost the same, and the ISO almost the same. And guys, it's normal because both Urnyx and Arnova are using Google Camera 7.3, so maybe they're using some different versions of the APK, right? But still it's the same. Those pictures here are taken without any custom settings, so directly out of the box with just using auto white balance 2 on and using HDR plus enhance. So still here we don't have the XMLs or the custom configuration in place. And we can pretty much see, guys, it's pretty much the same, right? Now the bokeh effect, everything, even if we go for the zoom one, and we just see the differences here, no big differences, right? So you can even see here some hair of the trees, pretty much same situation. Okay, now going to the next set of pictures, again left we have Urnyx, right we have Arnova. Let's check here, shutter speed same, almost the same, aperture almost the same, ISO, you see ISO, just 2 ISO more here, we have ISO 102 or ISO 98 here. Overall, when you see it like this, pretty much the same. If we go for the zoom, let's just check some of the details here, guys. Let's check the tiles here, let's check the graffiti. I would say no big difference whatsoever, guys, alright? Let's go for the next few pictures. Okay, here we have some nice flower. Right, let's just zoom it first, see the details here. Shutter speed almost the same, the aperture is the same, and you see almost the same ISO, guys. So that's what I was saying, guys. For me, comparing two different versions of Google Camera doesn't make a lot of sense, but rather what makes sense is comparing different XMLs. Okay, but I wanted to make this video more like on the educational side, that you just understand, you know, what we see on the screen, the exposure we see on the screen, the ready picture is just made of these three components, right? So it's the information captured on the sensor, regulated by your shutter speed, by your aperture, and then of course by the ISO, and that's really some basic photography theory. But if we zoom that picture, let's try to zoom that picture, guys. Again, here we have Urnyx, on the right hand side we have Arnova. Almost the same, guys, I would say no difference. So let's go here for the tree. I think here I already played with the auto-white buttons a little bit, and that is why here we can see almost first differences. See here, by the way, that's an interesting picture, guys, because here in these several conditions the Urnyx 7.3 took the picture with a shutter speed almost almost I think twice faster than the one that is here. So you see here we have 1 to 1114, here we have 1 to 592 seconds, alright? But then aperture still the same, ISO still the same, but you see this picture is a little bit more yellowish on the left hand side. The level of detail is still the same. I just think here that the auto-white balance starts to play, you know, the differences. You see carve, everything pretty much still the same. Alright, now some pictures I think I want to illustrate and show some more, alright? This I did, it's an interesting picture. Okay, let me just go first for the full view. Here we have a shutter speed of 1 to 548 seconds. Here almost the same, 1 to 522. Aperture still the same, ISO absolutely the same, just 2 more here. Same exposure, pretty much same picture, guys, same level of detail. If you go for the zoom version, we're gonna see that there is barely no differences. I just have a feeling that this here on the right hand side is a little bit more I would say more bright or more yellowish, but pretty much the level of detail is still the same, alright? You get my point. Okay, those here are some interesting pictures. I wanted to capture some pictures that apparently have dynamic range. So here we have this black part where we have shadows and the sun is not directly hitting the tiles, and then here we have on the left hand side we have the sun shining, and as we pretty much can see we still have the same parameters here, almost actually the exact same ISO, the exact same aperture, and we have just barely differences in the shutter speed. Okay, and if we go and zoom that thing, we're gonna pretty much see it's the same level of quality, almost I would say the same sharpness. I think here, although here it seems that on the Arnova one, I would like to say that Arnova looks a little bit better here. As to the left side, I think it has a little bit more noise, which I don't understand why, because the ISO is still the same. That's just, you know, a presumption. Still pretty much very equal, right? Let me guys show you some more pictures that I did. Okay, those one are very good. Just listen. Look at those two guys. Jesus, okay, that's not a nice picture representation, but I showed this picture because here you can see, you know, we have a hole and then we have a second background there, but okay, very much identical pictures. Here we have the shutter speed 195 sec, here we have it 1 to 127 sec, aperture still the same, ISO still the same, overall kind of the same pictures. When we zoom in, we're gonna see exactly the same level of details here. You see all the cigarettes smoked there, you know, all the hairs. It is pretty much as if it's shot from one and the same camera, guys. Now maybe it's a little bit brighter here, that what I can see from, or just no, sorry, it's the same. It's absolutely the same, guys. Okay. And let me just show some more pics, guys. Like I told you, I did some pics. Then at some point I did enable the XMLs that I told you, namely the 6 untrees overkill one on the Arnova camera, and then the Pixel 4 XML on the Urnyx. Alright, so let's see here. Left side Urnyx, right side Arnova. Okay, shutter speed almost the same, aperture absolutely the same, ISO almost the same, guys. Same quality, you know. So here I have to say about the cables, I have to admit the Arnova one is a little bit more focused, but this could 100% be on me just not focusing properly whatsoever, right? But if we go and see the details, just zooming on those cables, guys, I just think here it's a human mistake, right? Because probably not zoomed so much, but you see same level of details. Now I have the feeling that with this XML that I'm using right now on the Nova, you know, I get a little bit more of a sharper image, but then that's why I was about to tell you guys, comparing two different Google camera modes is not really a good idea. Comparing two XMLs on one camera application maybe is the better idea, and that's probably what I'm going to do in the future. But I wanted to make this video as an education video, so you know we can just see some of the differences here. Some more pictures for us to go, guys. So let's check here, almost the same shutter speed, same conditions, same aperture and same ISO. If we see the full picture, pretty much looks the same to me. I was looking again to have some dynamic contrast here, and the details here we have the vivid red opposed to these beige styles. Now if we unzoom it and we have to check the details, yeah, what I see here on the screen. Alright, let's just see the dispatch, guys. Again, I have the feeling that it's probably just about the XML. Arnova produces a little bit of more sharp pictures, but I'll tend to say this is just because of the XML and the settings. And remember this, the XML is created by guys, they create these things for themselves and of course for us, for the community, but it's just a matter of their own personal taste. So somebody would like to go with some more details there, with some more sharpness there. You see what I mean, right? Okay, some more pictures to go. Again, I told you I did a lot of pictures to try to make it kind of like this interactive lesson. This one is a very interesting one, is the auto tire. So let's see here, guys. Almost the same pictures, almost the same conditions in terms of shutter speed, aperture and ISO. If you kind of zoom the things and even see the details, I think this is probably where it gets interesting, because here, you know, we can really see the level of detail looks to be better, but maybe it's because the picture is more sharp than the one on the Urnyx side, right? Then again, here those details really are nothing coming from the XMLs. You see, I would say here I would more like the image produced from the Arnova camera, but then again, guys, it's not Urnyx is bad or Arnova is better or Arnova is bad and Urnyx is better. It's just about XMLs, and of course I'm doing these pictures by my hand, so sometimes it could be because of the photographer. Two more pictures. Let's see here what we have here. We have a graffiti. The shutter speed here on the Arnova is 1:693. Here is 1:689. So it's almost kind of again the same conditions. And if we zoom it, and just zooming it to just see these small details, guys. But I'm just trying to find some differences. All right, some more pictures to go. Again, left hand side we have Urnyx, right hand side we have Arnova. This also is a picture that I like. It's not, of course, because it have any photographical value, but because here we have highlights on the right, and then we have lowlights here. Sun is showing on the right hand side. If we go and we see these pictures, pretty much same conditions in terms of shutter speed, exposure and ISO. If we kind of zoom in, then let's see, I think when it's getting interesting, it is absolutely the same. Now I think here there are almost no differences. All right, just trying to find for something that can be evident of any big differences, but as I tell you guys, this is not really how things work, right? Comparing two Google camera modes is not okay. Comparing two XMLs on one camera mode is okay, because it's comparing settings. All right, you see what I mean? Okay, this one I shot. Again, this one is an interesting one, and I wanted to show you this one because here, it is with auto white balance enabled on one of the camera, and on the other is disabled. So this is why we have this big difference here in terms of, I would say, tint. But if we go and we just see the settings in terms of exposure, we have the same shutter speed, the same ISO, the same aperture, and if we even zoom and we actually just see the sign, guys, it's pretty identical. See here, right? It is really identical. Okay, I did also some pictures here. Let's see, this is what I did today in the morning. Wanted to get some pictures, inside, like with artificial light. And this is actually a very nice example. Here we have the absolute 100% same shutter speed and aperture, and then a little bit more ISO here. Overall, they look quite the same. Now let's see what happens when we zoom out. Sorry, when we zoom in. Okay, all the details, all the levels, guys, it is pretty much 100% identical. And the few last pictures I wanted to show to you guys are this little. Let's see if we can see some detail here, some changes here in the detail. Now I have done this comparison between the Arnova and the OnePlus 7 Pro stock camera, and then you can see, the differences are very big, really. You can check my previous video. Seeing here is pretty much the same, and if we try to zoom out on this, we have the absolute same aperture here, 165, absolute same shutter speed, and ISO is almost the same. Okay, and if we zoom in, let's try to zoom in here on Belgium. All right. Okay. Now again, I just have the feeling that the XML I'm using here produces more sharper image, and this is why you might want to think that here you have more detail, but that's not the case, guys. It's absolutely identical. Okay, last two pictures I want to show you. This is here, again, the shoes. This is taken just 1 hour ago, and what is the interesting here is that I didn't use night sight, so this is like a standard picture with the HDR enhanced, and that's interesting because here you see Urnyx uses the shutter speed of 0.1 second, and here is 1 to 11 second, right? But then we see that the aperture and the ISO is almost the same, but not really. And speaking about differences, let's see, this is interesting. let's try to compare the two here. Okay, here we have Urnyx, here we have Arnova. I think almost the same, guys. I would not say that one picture is better than the other. Let's see, let me just check, okay? And this picture here I taken with night side of both cameras. So here I was using night side. So again here, by the way, you see, so here you see almost the same conditions, guys. So here we have dot 13 seconds, here we have dot 11 seconds. So, you know, the shutter speed was a little bit slower just to make sure that enough light goes, you know, through the aperture of 1.65 using a higher value of the ISO to get more sensitivity and more light into those sensor and capture, of course, these details. So I think actually this has been, guys, the last pictures. With that said, again, the very big takeaway from this video is don't really, you know, compare different Google camera modes. Always try to go for different XMLs, and yeah, that's pretty much the best way for you to compare things, right? Maybe comparison that makes sense are what I did on my last video, comparing, let's say, stock cameras, you know, with a Google camera. This is something that works. Or let's say if you take one Google camera, you know, for different phones, that also is a good comparison, because then you can test the different sensors. Like for example, here on my Samsung I have the IMX345, and on my OnePlus 7 Pro I have the IMX586. So again, guys, I think this video is over 20 minutes, yeah, a little bit of a longer video, but I promised this video to you and I deliver, right? Again, the very important takeaway is that what we see on the screen is due to the exposure, which is kind of components of the exposure, our shutter speed, our ISO, and aperture. Again, so just to repeat this again, shutter speed is really the door closing in front of a sensor, how quick or how slow. Aperture is really, you know, let's say the size of the door. Is this like a small door or is this like a big door? And then ISO is kind of now how much light, you know, what is kind of sensitivity that goes inside, all right? The more ISO we have, the more noise we introduce to the picture, guys. Remember that, stay safe, stay at home if you can, right? In these hard times. And again, thank you very much for watching this video, guys. I have spent some time creating this for you. I hope you appreciate this, and I know you do appreciate this. With that said, VST over and bye.